Hello and welcome to week 5 in the history of psychology. And we are introduced to structuralism. And I want to make a connection between this particular perspective and the very modern perspective of constructionism or constructivism. Each one of those is appropriate. Constructivism in terms of how we create concepts within our brain. Structuralism comes along and starts to look, as much as we might want to think from our previous chapters, that this chapter is about the structures of the brain. It is actually not that. It is about the structure of experiences. It's taking apart the experiences that we have. Say I look at something, I'm at a concert, and you consider all of the details that are there. There's the sound, there's the lights, there's the movement, there's the language, there's the music and its language, there's the atmosphere, there's physical responses, there's auditory responses, visual responses, emotional responses, all of this stuff, extremely complex, right down to the, what is that flowery design on that person's jacket, or, all these details. You get this overwhelming sort of experience of the concert. Structuralism said that is made up of a million little pieces, and we can look at all those little pieces and how they add up to this whole of what we see. And that is very akin to the idea of constructivism, that we take pieces and we put them together in order to create ideas. Now, this is going to then contrast with the, I can't think of it right now because I'm making this up as I go, is Gestalt, which says that all those little pieces come together, but the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This right here, the structuralism, is the sum of its parts component. Then we're going to add that next theory, Gestalt, and we're going to see that not only do we construct things out of all these little pieces, but we add meaning to those beyond just the accumulation of those little pieces. And you start seeing a train of understanding that eventually brought us to today's world where we talk about constructivism. So back to structuralism. So it is the structure of experiences, all the little components of experiences. So we're introduced to Titchener, who was a very, very important character in the world of psychology for a lot of reasons. Bringing in structuralism was huge. He was also one of the individuals who really professed the idea of introspection. Just like we saw with Wundt and his processes of introspection, we see the same thing happening here with Titchener. He was also, not as much as maybe we would have liked, but he was very much an advocate for equal access for women in the field of psychology, understanding that as a global problem, not just in the United States, women being excluded from science altogether. He was very against that. He was very willing to teach students who were women and valued them as equals, yet still a person of his time could not see women eventually being part of the club. A transition person who, essentially valued the truth that women have as much brain power as men, but yet those traditions and structures that he grew up with, he was just not able to, or unwilling, or there were circumstances that disallowed him to be able to make those kinds of social changes. World not being ready yet, all of that stuff. So Kind of like when we talked about the beginning, when we were studying history and we look at individuals, but then we look at, when you have corresponding discoveries, we were talking about at the beginning, it had to do with the times and the point in social history when we were ready for that kind of thing. So here's this forward thinker, just not at the right time. But we have to give him that credit for saying, that for making some of those leaps that we would eventually see in terms of busting down those doors. Now, we look at Titchener's descriptions of experiences, and there's a few cues that we have. He looked at the quality of an experience, he looked at the duration, the intensity of that, the clearness of that particular experience. He's looking at objective, subjective pieces. Okay? So he gave us that. Now let's look at the discussions. The first discussion is, let's do some work, research. Let's find out and discuss what is it with Titchener and his contribution for women being eventually in the field of psychology. Let's have a discussion about that. Good, bad, and the ugly. The next discussion, I'm having you take an everyday object and attempt to describe that object in a scientific way that is akin to what Titchener was looking at. And I hope that Ari Hall in this class has posted in this discussion already. And please do not take this in any bad way, but Ari posted an elegant, very, very beautiful description of an iPhone. My response is she should get into marketing. This is poetic. This is really, really excellent writing. It is the exact opposite of what I'm looking for. And I really appreciate having this example in there. And don't take that in any sort of negative way. What we're looking at for is the dry reality. What you wrote, what Ari wrote, was the flowery, the essence, the experience, the feelings, the emotions, the textures and whatnot, but as they would be experienced by an individual who is enjoying it. You need to remove the emotional component. Elegant writing. I've showed it to a number of people. Hiding your name, don't worry about that. I've showed it to a number of people. I said, this is some damn good writing. And so feel really good about that. What I'm looking for is that sort of completely objective. This is difficult to get to because what Ari wrote about a phone is true. I have one. I don't have a case on it. I love the feel of the glass, the feel of the metal, the heaviness of it, all of those very visceral type feelings, sensations, I should say. Can we describe those kinds of experiences objectively without that judgment of feeling that comes through so strongly in Ari's words? So good job on what we actually call it a non-example, and it's a very important part of why discussions are so cool, because sometimes when you have a difficult thing to do, such as coming up with describing an object in an old way, sometimes the best example is what not to do. It's called a non-example. That's a teaching methodology. And to me, this exemplifies a really good, do the opposite of this, the cold sort of description of the object. That's what Titchener was looking for, was that breaking this down into, it's a rectangle with two little circles on it, really breaking it down to this sort of description of the physical, all of these elements coming together. What we're going to see what Aries Post adds is the gestalt. The gestalt says, oh, all these little pieces come together, but there's more to it than just a bunch of squares and circles. There's this elegant design. There's this feel-good machine that the iPhone represents. So really great work there. I want to point that out. So we have those two discussions. One, Titchener and his relationship to the history of women in psychology. And then we have this activity of taking an object in your world and describing it in a extremely objective way. It's actually, yeah, you just gotta take all the emotions out and just, that's how I'm interpreting what Titchener was doing. Go for it. Let's do it. So, thank you, Ari, for putting up with me pointing you out. I hope you're not embarrassed at all. I think this was a really, really good time. Good work. Really like that. And I'll see you folks in the discussion boards. Have a great week and take much care of yourself. See ya.